It's just grown in terms of the spectacle. There's more fights in season 3 than previous seasons, and then some unprecedented sequences, literally things that have never been done in film and TV before. What we put out creatively is what we get back creatively from the fans. So I think the show has really been shaped to fit the times. With that has come a lot more stunts and special effects and visual effects. It was a really long and complex evolution to develop his power. A huge journey of conceptualization there. We started with nuclear fusion. This glowing from the inside of the body look was a part of it that I knew we were going to have. And then we came up with this idea through previs early in production of maybe something happens to the environment and you start seeing these little rocks and pieces coming towards him. And the thing is, his power keeps changing throughout the course of the season because he's changing. So it was not exactly the same in every episode. There are certain things that aren't just performance or writing that can become character. So when the superpower becomes part of a character, I think that's really exciting.
Boy.
The best example of where character and visual effects and acting meets is Butcher's powers. For the longest time, they were green, but it wasn't complementing his performance in the right way. And I wanted it to be more emotional and be part of him. And so I was the one that pitched going orange. That's an example of complementing performance and watching out also for the talent. And I think one of the key things that we need to be doing as visual effects soups is building really strong empathetic relationships with the actors, because we have the ability to make them look ridiculous. They need to trust us as much as we need to trust them. And I want to make sure that they know that they're going to be respected and badass.
Irving, sooner or later, you're going to have to talk about it.
I was like, we need to figure out the scale of these guys in relation to everyone else. And we need to also figure out how to ground them or like worldize them into our show. It's such a complicated sequence if you think about it. He's watching these fictional characters in his head take on the persona of other characters from his past and put on a high school play, which is ultimately the exposition showing us the backstory of his life. And we need to differentiate the characters in the real world when they're like these characters from Buster Beavers from the characters when they're in his cartoon world. And we did that by color and worldizing. So if you watch all the shots where we're in Buster Beavers with Black Noir, you're going to see them desaturated. You're going to see shadows cast on the ground. You're going to see them interacting with lights, crossing in and out of light. That's all stuff we actually did in visual effects. But then the minute they get on the stage and the curtain opens, it becomes a much more bright, colorful world of animation. And I thought it really paid off in the next episode when he dies, when you see the reflection of him. It's just so much depth to that whole saying. I loved it. It was one of my favorite things of the season.
Ready? Oh, yes. I'm gonna rock your fucking dick, babe.
If you play up the comedy and make it slapstick and goofy, a scene like that, I think, is going to come off less surprising and gratuitous and cheesy. You really want to pull back that stuff and go like, okay, if a guy could shrink and he was a problemed, drug-addled, young, rich actor guy having too much of a party one night and he had some sexual kinks, like what would be the most realistic way he would do that? And so weirdly, that scene required the most amount of research. We actually built so many detailed objects. There's cigarette packs back there. There's all kinds of drugs. So like we really got detailed with our background and we kind of tried to keep it in focus because we spent all this time on it. And then we realized last minute, like, no, man, we have to make this shallow depth of field almost like a tilt shift lens because that's what's going to make it feel more real. You're always trying to figure out the best way to do the most grounded thing, even though the parameters get bigger and crazier and just more absurd.
A big thing with this show is that attention to detail and how the action sequences all come into play within the arc of the season and the arc of the character. You're really storytelling. We have a saying here that fighting solves everything. Because on The Boys, there's no talking. At one point, it's going to end up in a fight, and that's how they solve the issue. We always have a lot of blood, like an incredible amount of blood all the time. So I think it's really cool how we do it here, because it's not just for shock value, or it's not just because. There is something behind it. There's substance. There's a lot of cast members. So each one of those cast members have their own style and their own tone going throughout the season. So whenever there's a fight or some type of action, all of that has to be told, the difference in what they're going through as their characters are going through. We had met and talked about season 3. We talked about the overall arc of the season, and we talked about each character. We really dissected each one of their strengths, their weaknesses, their power levels, the arc of their story as well within the world of the boys. This moment, it's one of the first times Huey is on V, and he punches a guy and it goes all the way through his chest, and he's like, "Shit, I'm sorry." Those kind of moments are definitely R&D'd early on. Each sequence we do, I usually just choreograph and we R&D it, we pre-visit, and then we start going over methodology, logistically, how we're gonna make this happen. And then we keep refining it till we have our polished version. My theme on this show, because of the fact that it's superheroes, it's limitless. That's gonna play into it, but we try to keep the overall tone grounded. They all have to have different styles. We try to keep them pretty distinct, especially in regards to the Herogasm fight, because that was the first time we were gonna see Homelander fight. Before that, he uses lasers, everybody. And the power levels of Homelander versus Soldier Boy versus Butcher on V, when lasers would be used, when they wouldn't be used, and who would be using them, and all of that. For us working on it, it is the best show because it is so unique and it gives us so many challenges, yet so much freedom to really explore it creatively. There couldn't be a better playground.
The choices you make with the costumes that you put on your characters can very much help propel the story and help the audience go on a journey. With each of our characters, we try to have a different design philosophy. In terms of Soldier Boy, it was important that we lay into that he was macho. He was a superhero of yesteryear. So he'd look at superheroes like Homelander and think, they're not manly. Look at them wearing their tights. So one of the things that was important was that we put Soldier Boy in pants. And even his jacket had a little bit of looseness to it. The scarf that he wears has a feeling of a military operation. His color scheme in the books was red and green, which can oftentimes go Christmas and not hit the mark when you're trying to be a tough guy. So we did diverge from a military green and we opted for something that had a bit more life in it. We added some sparkles in his star repeat pattern that catch the light in a really beautiful way. So he's not overtly sparkly, but it just breathes life into this green. We oftentimes start with a much brighter, lighter tone than where we end up. The reason why we do that is because it actually emanates and glows from within.
Yeah!
What the fuck is he wearing?
Like anything on The Boys, we had to keep it grounded because the laugh that we get isn't that he looks bad. It's that he would take it to that level, that he would create that kick-ass suit in his Afrocentric colors when it so really isn't who he actually is in his heart and soul. That's the perverse part, not the suit itself. The suit itself, we worked really hard to make really great choices to have it emulate the same pattern and design lines of his original A-Train suit, which was meant to be aerodynamic and athletic, but putting it in this lens and scope of having it be hyper Africanized. One of the things I love about our show is that I've been fortunate enough in all of our seasons to collaborate with other amazing costume designers who really do create day player suits that play in the same league as the ones that my team and I create. It's neat that we're able to do that in a way that is really cohesive and seamless.
The first moment he took V, we actually went a lot brighter. That was the one bright shirt we used last year. It's that first high. Everything's brighter, everything's shinier, everything's more electric. But then as the drugs set in, you're chasing that high. Things are slowly crumbling. It kind of flips into you're not that shiny person in the Flatiron anymore. He always had a new Hawaiian shirt. So we started repeating stuff from throughout the seasons and started dipping them into muddier, darker colors. The cleanliness and the upkeep is falling apart as health falls apart. So with Karen, as she's coming more into herself, there's some dark reds and some burgundy hits and some fishnets. We added some beading on the boots. She's trying to mimic that New York life. She's catching glimpses of what she sees on the street and slowly incorporating it into her world, changing her from the female to Kamiko, to have that moment where she slips out of the ski jacket. My feeling was that was kind of the beginning of the new Kamiko. I really try to concentrate on every costume. There's little tiny things to get on a show of this size and this caliber.
It's a visceral thing. So many of the choices that we make, we can never expect the audience to literally process. However, it's the vibe that you get. It's the feeling that you get. And when you make the right choices, it feels right. It feels organic and it helps propel the story.